Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. My name's Emma. In this video I'm going to be doing a beginner's guide to the Funky Friends Factory Melody Bear pattern, which you can buy in paper format or you can buy instant download PDF. They've got a website, a couple of Facebook groups. They do lots of other really cool animal patterns, so definitely check them out. First thing you want to do is read the pattern all the way through to make sure that you've got all the supplies that you need. There's lots of tips in there as well. It gives you tick-by-tick instructions of how to make the bear, so it's a really good pattern, really user-friendly. Pattern pieces will all be inside on A4 paper. I photocopied them and put the originals to the side so that I've always got them as a backup if my paper ones get ripped. So cut all your pattern pieces out. The only one that you want to be careful about is the tummy piece, because it comes in two pieces. So cut them both out, but before you start doing your interfacing on your fabric, sellotape them together, because that's actually one pattern piece for the tummy. So once you've cut out all your pattern pieces, you're ready to start transferring onto your interfacing. That is if you're using interfacing. You don't have to use interfacing depending on what fabric you're using, but I use interfacing on all the fabric for a bear. I just think it looks better. You don't have to buy expensive interfacing. I'm just using cheap interfacing today. If I'm making a bear for a customer, I would use 100% woven cotton interfacing because that gives you a much better finish. I'm just making a bear for myself today because I want an extra one to add photos to my Etsy shop and my social media. So I'm just making a bear today that's different to the other ones that I've made, just to give me a bit more variety to show what I can do. I transfer all my pattern pieces onto card because I find paper really flimsy and difficult to transfer onto the interfacing, but you don't have to do that. You can just use the paper ones. Some people laminate them or transfer them onto plastic. Entirely up to you. So now we've cut out all of our pieces, we're ready to start transferring them onto interface. Most of the pattern pieces, apart from the forehead and the back head, which are only one, most of them are two. So in the pattern, it will say cut one reversed. So what that means is cut one, and then reversed is flip it, and that is your cut one reversed. So what you want to do is draw all your pattern pieces onto your interfacing. You can trace them. I prefer to draw around the card. I don't like tracing because I find the interfacing slips around. So this is the face piece I'm doing here now, and I'm just going to make sure that I've definitely marked where the eye is. And I mark all the other letters and markings. I mark onto my piece. Also transfer these little directional arrows, because if your fabric has a pattern, you need to know the direction of the fabric so that your text or your pictures don't end up upside down. Oh, I forgot to do the eye again. Face. Don't forget to do the eye. I mark which is the original and which is the reversed. I call them A and B, so that if you're doing a patchwork pattern, you know which is one side of the bear and which is the other side of the bear. So if you're just doing it all in the same fabric, you don't really need to mark which is your cut one and which is your cut reverse. If you're doing a patchwork, you might want to think about which pattern piece you're using on which fabric, so it might be beneficial to know which is the reversed. So I've drawn around my cut one, I've drawn around my cut reversed, and I've transferred all the letters, the markings, where the eyes are. This is the face I'm doing, and I've copied all of that onto my interfacing. When you transfer onto your interfacing, don't be tempted to like save interfacing and butt them right up next to each other like that. Leave a gap, because when we cut this out, we're going to be cutting 3 to 5 millimeters around it. We're not going to be cutting on the line we've just drawn. Okay, so once you've drawn around all of your pieces, which I'm going to go and do now, and then I'll come back and we can cut them out. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this. I've traced all my pattern pieces onto my interfacing. I've done this really quickly, but you should really take your time and be careful with this and make sure all your pieces are accurate, so that when you come to sew the bear together, it all fits together nicely. I didn't mention I have also written on the pattern pieces what they are. For example, I've put OL for outer leg, because some of the pieces, especially the leg pieces and the arm pieces, I get really confused by which is which. So I have labelled all the pieces as to what pattern piece they are, as well as putting the letters, the directional arrows, and any other little marks on there. So now I've got them all transferred onto my interface. What I'm going to do is cut all the pieces out. Now, I think I mentioned before, when you cut them out, don't cut on the line that you have just drawn. Cut 3 to 5 millimeters away. It doesn't have to be neat or accurate at this point. You're just cutting them out roughly in order that you can iron them onto your fabric. So that's what I mean. I've just cut a gap around. So now you can go and cut out all your pieces using this method. So don't cut on the line, cut just around the line. So I've nearly cut out all my pieces. You might be thinking, especially if this is the first time you've done this, that this is taking a really long time. And it is quite time consuming, especially when you first start. But it really is worth going to this extra effort in the beginning, and when you come to construct the bear later, it will make it much easier. So I've got all my pieces of interfacing now. So I'm just going to go over what fabric I'm going to use. I haven't made a bear out of a smart shirt yet, so I bought this man's shirt from a charity shop. The reason I picked this is, one, because it's got long sleeves, which means you've got loads of fabric, so if you make a mistake you've got plenty left over. So think about how much fabric you've got, make sure you've definitely got enough before you start cutting it out. I wanted to do a bear that's all one fabric all over. I've done like patchwork ones before and ones with shirts and jumpers, but I haven't done one with just a whole shirt. Also, I picked this one because it looks brand new, it's in really good condition. If you're making a memory bear and you're using second-hand clothes, if they're faded or bobbly, the end result of your bear really doesn't look as good as if you're using like really good condition fabric. So that's the reason I picked this shirt. I think I'm going to try and attach the buttons and the shirt later. So when I cut my shirt up, I'm going to carefully cut plenty of room around that area so that I can work out how I'm going to attach that later. So I'm not going to cut just along the seam there. I'm going to leave myself, I'm going to cut a bit extra so that if I do attach that, I can fold it under and I won't have a raw edge. So don't just go and cut. If you want to save things, plan how you're going to do it. Like, for example, you might want to save the cuffs. I'm not going to. You might want to save the collar and the buttons. If there was like a designer label on it, you might want to keep that. Any writing, any text. this is just a really small checked shirt, so there's nothing I want to save on this other than the collar and the front panel buttons. So I'm going to start cutting this up now. When you're cutting up other people's clothes, this is kind of the worst bit. Once you've done this and you start ironing your interfacing on, you're well away and you realise it's fine. Ooh. So, like I say, I'm not entirely, it looks like there might be a button missing there. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with the button panel. So I'm just going to cut it off, but leave myself enough excess if I need to fold it under and hide any raw edges later. Then I can. As well with the collar, I'm not just going to cut the collar out there. I'm going to give myself a bit extra, and then because I'm not sure if I'm going to use this collar or how I'm going to use it, so I just want to give myself options that I will be able to attach it later if I want to. So I'm going to cut that entire piece off as one piece. I don't know if I'm going to attach it as one piece or if I'm going to cut the collar off and do the buttons separately. I haven't decided yet, but I've just prepped that so that I can do whichever one I want when I come to it. The next thing you want to do, if you're doing like something with sleeves, I'd cut the sleeves off because, and also when I iron my interfacing on, I will use the sleeves first. The reason I use the sleeves first is because you get quite a lot of fabric out of the sleeves, especially on something like this. And then if you make any mistakes, you've still got plenty of fabric left over to use. So I'm going to use the sleeve first. So cut both your sleeves off. Like I say, if you want to save this, think about it. I don't think I'm going to save it. So find the seam of the arm on the inside. Don't just cut on the outside and ruin a big piece of fabric. Cut down the seams so you're opening the shirt up to get as much fabric as you can. So you can see now I've opened up that sleeve, quite a lot of usable fabric there, so that's really good. So I'm going to do the same on the other sleeve. So cut both my sleeves off. Now I'm just going to see what I'm left with, and I'm going to cut along the shoulder seam. Again, I'm going to cut along the seam. And open, like so, I'm opening the shirt completely out, and I do that on both sides. And then you've got one sort of massive piece of fabric. So now I've cut out all my pieces of interfacing, and I've cut up my shirt that I'm going to use. I'm going to start ironing my interfacing onto my shirt. Make sure you follow the instructions on your interfacing, because all interfacing irons on differently. Although once you've done a few, different types. You don't really need to use the instructions. You kind of start to understand how it works, and you can just do it easily. I'm just ironing the sleeve before I iron the interfacing on, because I don't want to iron any, I don't want to sort of put any creases, iron the interfacing on and iron any creases into it, because then once the interfacing is stuck to it, you won't be able to get that out. So what I'm going to do is the biggest pieces first, because like I said earlier, I'm going to use the sleeves, I'm going to use the biggest pattern pieces, and then if I make any mistakes I need to cut any more out, I've still got loads of fabric left. So if you haven't used interfacing before, the shiny side is the glue side. Sometimes it's bobbly with little dots of glue. This one is more just got a thin layer of glue. So you want to put your glue side, this is where the arrows also come in useful if you're using a directional print fabric. This is the back of the bear, so this is the top and this is the bottom. So if you're adding writing or pattern, that is the direction of the pattern piece. I'm just using this shirt, this small check shirt, so I'm not worrying too much about the direction of the print. Put your glue side down on your fabric. Now most interfacing, you don't iron it on, you just dab it on and hold it for about 8 seconds. Some like steam, some don't like steam. I've got a little bit of steam on the go, not too hot, some medium heat. Hold it for 8 seconds, longer if it needs it, pick it up and move it. You don't really iron interfacing on as such in the way that you'd iron your clothes. You more dab it on, make sure that it's stuck on all over, which it is. Do the other back piece. Hold it for 8 seconds. Ooh. Make sure it's all, oh, that one's not stuck on very well. This is where you have to be really patient, and it's quite time consuming. If you rush through this, then when you cut out your fabric on the next stage, the interfacing will start coming off and you'll have to come back and iron it again. So try and really take your time on this piece. It's frustrating because you want to crack on so you're bare, but it'll just make life so much easier down the line. Once you've ironed them on, give them a few seconds just to cool and the glue set before you start cutting out. So I'd maybe put that piece to the side and iron some more. So once they've cooled down, this is now where we're at the point where we're going to cut our fabric out, and we're going to actually cut it on the actual line we've written. You don't need to add extra on for a seam allowance because the seam allowance is already designed within the pattern. So cut actually on the line, make sure it's all glued on. Sometimes when you cut it out you'll notice you didn't do a very good job, so just at this point I'd keep the iron out, and then you can, any that you haven't quite stuck on properly, you can do that as you go. It's really annoying when you put the iron away, start cutting out your interfacing, your fabric, and then realise the interfacing is not stuck on properly. I'm rushing because I'm filming this, but really take your time. You really want accurate pieces, otherwise when you sew it together it's not going to all match up. I'll probably find, because I've rushed, that it's not going to match up when I do it. So there's one of my back pieces, interfaced. Okay, you can see I've cut it right on the line. So go ahead and iron all your pieces onto your fabric. Don't forget to think about the directional print. Don't forget, if you're doing patchwork, to think about, oh, do I want that fabric on that side and that fabric on that side? Like, have a little think about how you're going to do it, and definitely make sure you've got enough fabric, because I think there's about 24 pieces in this pattern, and you'll be surprised actually how much fabric you need. You do need quite a lot to do this project. I think it says in the pattern exactly how much you need, but when you're cutting up clothes, if that's how you're doing it, it's difficult to work out if you've got enough, so just plan ahead. I haven't got time to sew along in this video today, so what I'll do is I'm going to iron all my interfacing on, cut out all my pieces, and then later I'll do a video when I've got time sewing it all together, so you can join me on that. When I do the sew along video, I'll add it on to the end of this video. Otherwise, I'll add it on as a separate sort of 2-part video. So this will be part 1, the next will be part 2, and that'll be the sew along. So if you subscribe to my channel, you'll get notified when I've uploaded that. Hopefully it'll be later today, if not within the next few days. So you've got plenty of time to prep all your pieces, and then you can join me later to sew along. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you all for watching. See you next time. Bye.